We've got 4 species of exotic Mediterranean snails that were introduced into Australia sometime in the last 100 years. They were first recorded between 1920 and 1950, and basically they've been spread around the country through human transport by snails hitchhiking on cars, trucks and on fodder. And generally they've become quite abundant in some coastal agricultural zones of South Australia and Western Australia, but also parts of Victoria and New South Wales. They attack crops, so they will eat young seedlings. They will also strip green leaves during the vegetative stage, but the main issue they cause is that they climb into plant canopies in the spring and can end up in the harvest, which is obviously a massive issue for trade and for grain quality. We've worked hard and managed to find all 4 snails today. Now we've got 2 round snails. The first one we're looking at here is the vineyard snail, Cernuella virgata. What you'll see here is quite a strong spiral pattern, brown spirals on that snail that's continuous. The main way to distinguish between the 2 round snails is the shape of the hole in the middle. That hole we refer to as the umbilicus, and on this snail it's quite open, almost like a donut. Now you will see quite a lot of colour variation within each species of snail, and that's driven by environmental conditions, so the sorts of food that they've eaten as they've grown up, solar exposure and their habitat and that sort of thing, and also the availability of calcium. So we've got quite a banded shape here, but we've also got a non-banded morph here, and you can find these all in the same location. So colour itself is not a great guide because there is a wide variation. The vineyard snail can occur in coastal regions, but it can also occur further inland than the white Italian snail. Now here we have the white Italian snail, and this is the largest of the snails in the adult stage. You can see these ones are very large. If we look at the shape of the umbilicus, it's partly closed over in this snail. And it's very obvious on this specimen here that that hole is partly closed over. And again, that's quite consistent. The other feature is that you will see banded snails like this one, but the banding pattern is more broken. So there are sort of white streaks all the way through it, and that makes it quite easy to recognise Thiva pisana. Now sometimes the shape of the hole can be a little bit intermediate between the 2 snails, and it can be a bit confusing. So one trick that you can use is to get a hand lens and look very closely at the shell, and Thiva pisana will have very small cross-hatch shapes on the shell that you'll see in both directions, whereas the vineyard snail doesn't. And you'll often find them in very high abundance in some coastal areas, particularly if there's a lot of free calcium in the soil that enables them to grow very strong shells. So the 2 conical snail species really like to hide under refuges, and if you turn over logs and rocks, you can often find one or both species hiding quite happily. Here we have what we call the conical snail, Cochlicella acuta. It's a very long and pointy and skinny snail. Once again, there's a lot of variation in the colours on the shells. So some are quite bleached and some are quite banded. The snail is more than twice as long as it is wide with these snails. Very distinctive once you get your eye in. And again, that one's quite a coastal snail. Here we have the small pointed snail, Cochlicella barbara, and you'll see it's a much shorter, I guess robust shape. It's wider, and the ratio of the length of it to the width of it is less than 2 to 1. In other words, the snail is less than 2 times as long as it is wide at the widest point. Again, you'll see the coloration's probably a little bit different to the conical snails. Those were a little bit whiter, a little bit paler. These ones are often a bit browner, a little bit of a darker colour, and they tend to blend in with the soil perhaps a little bit more. They love hiding in here. It depends on the time of the year as to where the snails will be, but certainly the key difference between the round snails and the conicals is the conicals are much more cryptic, so they prefer to hide in cryptic habitats such as under rocks, under logs and in trash and stubble, whereas the round snails are more likely to be up and visible. So typically what you see in any situation is only the tip of the iceberg.